Hello, everyone. We're going to learn today about the two other kinds of domain. We learned last week about Reshut Yachid and Reshut Rabim, the private domain and the public domain. We said that the public domain was learned from the life of our ancestors in the desert, that there was 600,000 people that traveled together, and it was a straight place, not turning and having curves in the road, and also that it was 16 amot wide, about 25 feet. And Reshut Yachid, of course, is anything that is private domain that you need permission to be in somebody else's space. What I was trying to look just now was for a proper example of Mekom P'tur according to the Maimonides. I was told when I was learning history in high school that in the first and second centuries there were monks who lived in the Judean desert on a pole, and basically people would give them food through a bucket that was tied to a rope, but otherwise they stayed on the pole for years sometimes. So that is an actual good example of Makom P'tur. So the third type of domain is Makom P'tur, exempt area. According to Torah law, this includes fields, deserts, oceans, lakes, and other places not enclosed by walls, and thus not deemed Reshut Yachid, and also not used by the masses on a regular basis, and thus are not deemed Reshut Rabim. So even a beach, not only the ocean itself, but also the beach, a lot of people do go there, but they're not there 24/7, and they don't go from there into the water by foot. So it's not used as a place that you walk through. Since these are undefined places, they have no significance as a location. And by the way, if you remember in the introduction, Rav Melamed pointed out that everything in the world is defined also by its location. There's the three dimensions of width, length, and height, but there's also the fourth dimension of time. So in Judaism, we are very concerned about all these things because basically the idea is that Shabbat is supposed to be a separate time for not to move around things from one location to the other. So we don't go to another city on Shabbat. We also don't get married on Shabbat for other reasons, but same idea is that changes of domain, changes of ownership, changes of belonging and having a relationship are not allowed on Shabbat. An object is in a Makom P'tur is not located in a place that establishes a connection with it. Therefore, Torah law permits carrying an object from a Makom P'tur to a Reshut Yachid or a Reshut Rabim, and vice versa. Similarly, one may carry objects within a Makom P'tur for as long and far as they wish. So this is according to Torah law, but of course we have the fourth domain, which is called Karmelit, which was created by the rabbis to make a fence. That way, people do not violate Shabbat or make it look like it's just a regular day and things are moving from one place to another. So, however, since a Makom P'tur is in some ways similar to a Reshut Rabim, as the masses may make use of both types of areas, the sages safeguarded the Torah and declared that any open area that is not Reshut Yachid shall be called a Karmelit. I'm not sure what the source of the name was. I tried to look for it, but the only connection I could find is that Mount Carmel is a mountain, and so it doesn't belong to one person, but it's also not accessible by anybody. If somebody wants to take a shortcut, they don't climb a mountain in order to take a shortcut, they go around the mountain. So that's I think the connection, but I'm not sure what the source of the name is. And so the Carmelit has a status akin to that of Reshut Rabim. Thus, it is prohibited to carry an object more than 4 amot in a Carmelit, and one may not carry anything from a Carmelit to Reshut Yachid or Reshut Rabim, and vice versa. The one amazing thing that we learned about in many different cases about about the rabbinical prohibitions is that makom tzorech, meaning if there's a need for a community or there's a need for somebody who is ill but isn't ill that we have to lechalel Shabbat, that we don't have to break Shabbat. So, for example, if the eruv fell, which means that the city is no longer connected, circled by these imaginary walls. So the whole city becomes technically a Karmelit, and we have to do a bris. The moel would still be allowed to carry the bag on Shabbat to do the mitzvah. And there's other examples in the army. We were told that if we can walk 4 amot and stop, and then another 4 amot, or put it on somebody's shoulder, that way it becomes a makom p'tur, that would also be allowed. So I think that's to understand the context, because the Torah did not want to forbid it, but also doesn't want us to treat Shabbat as if it's just a regular day of the week. So the only places that are still called a makom p'tur are those that are not fit for significant use, such as rocks that are higher than 3 tefachim, about 23 centimeters, just less than a foot, and also less than 4 tefachim wide, about a foot by a foot. One may carry something from a makom p'tur into a reshut yachid or reshut rabim, and vice versa. Such a makom p'tur was not included in the decree because it is fundamentally different from the other domains. So, for example, if we talked about in the chapter about plants, we talked about something hanging from a tree. But let's say that the tree is already dead and it's just a stem and it has a peg on it. That peg would be considered makom p'tur. So if there's something hanging on it, and you remember that you need it for Shabbat, you're not violating the part about moving a plant because the stem of the tree is not going to move. And if, let's say, you left a canteen there or something like that hanging from this peg, it would be allowed to bring it into Rosh Yachid, into the private domain, because it is considered a makom p'tur. So because it's less than it's higher than a foot in height, and also less than 4 by 4 tefachim, about a foot by a foot. So since it is over 3 tefachim high, it is distinct from the ground, and since it is less than 4 tefachim wide, it is not big enough to be significant. Therefore, no one will make the mistake of thinking that if one may carry in an insignificant makom p'tur, one may also carry in a larger and more significant place. I'll just tell you something that Rabbi Tamar taught us a couple of years ago, that if somebody is on their balcony and there isn't an eruv in the city, and they're playing ball, and it flies over to another balcony, technically, because it's you're not actually carrying it in Reshut Rabim, the neighbors are allowed to throw it back to the balcony where it was. Otherwise, you would have to go all the way down from wherever you are in the building and go and knock on their door and interrupt them. But I think that's a good example again of the makom p'tur, especially if it lands on something that is small, like a tiny little table or some kind of vase or something like that that's in the other balcony. And so we'll stop here and we'll open up for questions.